If I could have your attention, please. A very pleasant good afternoon, and welcome to this historic Circle of Gold induction. Historic because at this hour, the membership of Circle of Gold stands at 197, which means in a short time we will cross a very significant threshold. And I'm pleased that each of you are with us this afternoon to be a part of it. At this time, I would like to ask members of the Circle of Gold to please stand and be recognized. I'd like to add a special welcome to Eric and Molly Barron, not only for being here for the ceremony, but also for their extraordinary hospitality and allowing us to use their box following this event so we can watch the spring football game. It's customary for the chairman of the Alumni Association's National Board of Directors to induct new members into the Circle of Gold, and we will follow that tradition this afternoon with Laurel Moordock from the class of 1978 and Jacksonville, Florida. But before she comes to the microphone, there's another tradition, the singing of the hymn. So I'd like to ask if you would please stand as the acapelles provide the hymn to the garnet and gold.
That was beautiful. Thank you so much. Hello, everybody. This is one of the favorite parts of being chairman of the board, is being able to recognize people that do wonderful things for Florida State and in the name of Florida State representing us everywhere they go. I'm very, very excited because I'm close to this first inductee. We've worked on the board together for many years, and first inductee will be Diane Irvin. Diane may have spent her professional life in the world of librarians where the word of the day was shh. But her support of Florida State University has been anything but quiet. Diane came to FSU for her master's degree, graduating in 1972, and then setting out on a career as a library media specialist in South Carolina. Along the way, she became Dr. Irvin, and her work in the Greenville Public Schools earned her the Distinguished Service Award from the South Carolina Association of School Librarians. Alumni tend to have a greater affinity for where they did their undergraduate degree, but not Diane. She became a Seminole Booster for over 20 years. She's a lifetime member of the Alumni Association since 1988. Along with her husband, Doug, who she converted to a Seminole, the Irvins have given generously to more than over a dozen initiatives. Equally important has been her contribution of time and talent, as I mentioned. Diane was one of the early presidents of the Upper South Carolina Seminole Club, located near Greenville. As our athletic schedules took us up there to play Clemson, the Upper South Carolina Club became our official host, and they put up many hours making us feel welcome, especially during those Bowden Bowl years. Diane served as president of that club from 1998 till 2004, and then went back in the role in 2007 and is still to this day serving as president of that club. Under her leadership, that club has established a scholarship, recruited students at the college fairs, and in 2003, when the Alumni Association National Board Cheryl Beckett chose as her platform literacy education, the Upper South Carolina Club answered the call by purchasing more than 200 books for the Within Reach program serving underprivileged children. Not surprisingly, that year, Diane's club was recognized as a Club of the Year. So often happens when we see successful Seminole Club presidents, their work captures our attention, and Diane was asked to join the national board in 2005, where she served for several years as the program's committee chair. During this time, she became aware of an opportunity for nonprofit organizations in South Carolina to establish their own affinity tag. And along with the Midlands Club, she spearheaded the effort to create this. So now, not only do South Carolina alumni have the ability to brag with their own tag, but the extra money that they pay for that tag comes back to the Florida State Alumni Association Legacy Scholarship, as well as an endowed scholarship for South Carolina students to attend FSU. Diane, as the consummate librarian, I know you never want to hear your name associated with the word overdue. But this day is in fact overdue. We welcome you to the Circle of Gold.
I'm so honored to be receiving Circle of Gold, but I really feel that this is a shared award with the Upper South Carolina Seminole Club. So let me just tell you a little bit about the club. Laurel has already stolen some of my thunder, but it bears repeating, okay? I so wish that I had the experiences that many of you had as being undergraduates here at FSU. It must have been awesome to have been a part of a family like this for 4 years. As Laura said, I came to FSU as a graduate student in the School of Information in 1971 because my best friend and I decided that we wanted to get our master's degrees, and the FSU Library School had a fantastic rating, and so we just came. We were both young and single, and we had a great year. But because we were older and because we didn't live in the dorms, we just didn't get involved in many of the activities that you do when you are an undergraduate student. We lived at Hayden Arms apartments on Hayden Road, and of course these are now the slums, but at that time they were brand new and we thought we had arrived. But even in 1971, parking on this campus didn't exist. So if you, where we are, Hayden Arms are right up there, right next to the Jonas's condo. So what we would do, there was a railroad track there, so we would walk over the railroad track down into the stadium parking lot here and catch the bus to class. It worked. But it's so ironic that we now have to, the little cut pathway that comes through from our parking lot, from our Seminole parking lot now. I have to walk right by the side of the apartment where I used to live, and I swear, y'all, it looks like the air conditioner is probably still the same one that was there when. And of course, that was pre-Bobby Bowden and pre-Dynasty and pre-whatever. One of my upstate friends says that when you went to the games, they asked you whether or not you had any alcohol, and if you said no, they gave you some. I grew up in a Clemson family. My father graduated from Clemson in 1941 when it was still a military school just for males, and he played baseball there. And I never even considered having anything but orange blood. In fact, in elementary school, my best friend and I, from about 4th grade, decided that we were going to be the first girls at Clemson. And it is so ironic that both of us attended undergraduate schools at all-girls schools. So after getting my degree from FSU and going back to South Carolina, I really didn't have that much connection with Florida State. But that changed when FSU came into the ACC in the early 90s. Even though my best friend, and I've told Terry and Susan the story of this earlier, but even though my best friend swears that we were there, we really were not at Point Ruski. But I haven't missed a single Clemson game since that until last year. But I will have to say I was listening on the radio, and even 3 hours later, when the Clemson fans were still waiting for the punt to come down, I was still listening. My friend, who I was telling you about, also attended library school at FSU, and we found out about the blossoming upstate Seminole Club, and we decided that we would check it out. And it was during one of the ACC baseball tournaments that all of them used to be held at the Brave Stadium there in Greenville. So we went out and we met the infamous Uncle Ron, and we were hooked. I don't know how many of you knew Ron Johnson. Some of you older folks here knew Ron Johnson. Everybody knew Uncle Ron during those days. He was the ultimate no. And he and his wife Ruth loved FSU, and he's just quickly passed on all of that to me. And I knew right away that I was going to put my all into trying to help our club develop. Uncle Ron kept telling me that we needed to come to leadership conference and meet Betty Lou and Terry, and he was so right. We came in something like 1997, and again, we haven't missed a year since that, except for last year. The love and pride that was there during those weekends is something that every Knoll needs to experience. And that was back when clubs submitted a scrapbook for Club of the Year, and we really wanted to win that. And we would work so hard on activities and do what we thought was such a wonderful job on our scrapbook. And then we would find out that, I think it was a Kentucky club, I swear they had a professional scrapbooker. Ours looked like a kindergarten thing compared to theirs. But anyway, we finally did come through. Uncle Ron's theory was that we needed to make Clemson weekend something special for Knoll fans, something that no other club could touch, and we have tried to do that. During the late 90s, the games were usually in September, and it was always so very, very hot. But one year we cooked hamburgers for everyone, and one of our club members who had been the cook was he was actually sitting in the Clemson section, and somebody said, "I smell hamburgers." And Kim said, "That would be me." Our biggie was 1999, which was our national championship year. The game that year was a night game in late October, and the weather had been fantastic, but it suddenly got very cold on game day. Another one of our members, who was a professional chef, Keto McKinney, some of you might know him, he lives in Destin, Florida now, planned that we would cook and serve a meal to our fans. So we, meaning the 10 of us in our club, along with Terry and Susan, actually cooked something like 300 pounds of tri-tip roast on a grill at Clemson and served about 1,500 meals that day. And if you remember, we did win the game, but barely. I think the score was something like 17-14, and we got that field goal very close to the end of the game. But it was so windy and cold, and the original Garnet and Gold guys, Kevin and Josh, were there, and they were staying at our house. I was so worried about them out there in their little no clothes. But as it turned out, they had more reason to be worried about me. After the game, it took us hours to get out of the Clemson parking lot, and traffic was just gridlocked. And so another one of our members had a Budweiser connection, and we had a beer truck that day. Well, the beer truck got into the gridlock also. And so people from surrounding cars start jumping out, pulling the taps. So by the time we get out of there, we have no beer left in the truck. As I said, Kevin and Josh were staying with Doug and me at our house, and so Doug was taking Kevin and Josh back to Greenville, and Ann and I were bringing the money. Ann was our club treasurer. And remember now, we had sold like 1,500 meals, so we had a lot of cash in our car. And the boys, they were supposed to follow us back to Greenville, but somehow when we got onto 85, they got ahead of us. And we had a flat tire. And it was something like 2 a.m., and we were stuck out on 85 with a flat tire. Two females who had money, not, usually looking for money. Two females who had money. Finally, Highway Patrol stopped, and he said he would call a tow truck, and they would be there in 5 minutes. And then in like 5 minutes, he came back, and he said, I was too worried about you guys. I had to come and change the tire. And we said, we were too worried too, so thank you very much. But the money that we earned that day allowed us to establish our scholarship that we named in memory of Keith Oglesby, one of our other founders. And I might also add that when we moved from our house years later, there was still garnet and gold glitter in our guest bathroom. Being at Clemson really just doesn't work for me. 2 years ago at a baseball game, we had to change seats. And I ended up sitting to a very attractive Noel fan who told me that her name was Carol and that she was from Tallahassee. And we had a lively conversation all night, and she asked what I thought about Bobby Bowden's leaving. And we lamented, and I said, yeah, but it was really time for him to leave. And it's probably time for Mike Martin to leave, too. So I invited her to our club event for the next day, and I said, by the way, do you have a son playing on the team? And she said, no, I have a son and a husband coaching the team. But she came to our party the next day. In 2005, I was so fortunate, again with the help of Terry and Betty Lou and David Mobley and Ron Richmond and so many others, to be selected to be a part of the Alumni Association National Board. Again, what an experience and what a wonderful group of people to meet and to grow to love. Those 6 years will always be so special to me. My term was up last June, and while I was sad that I was no longer going to be a part of the group, I was so excited about the upcoming football season and that our club again would be hosting Seminole Nation for the Clemson game. I had finally retired from my second career in sales, and I just knew that we were going to be able to come to Tallahassee to all the games and not have to rush back for me to go to work on Monday. But that was not to be. My mother fell in late August, and it seemed like she would be doing fine during the week, and then the weekend would come and something would happen, and we couldn't leave her. So on the Thursday night before we were leaving to come to the Oklahoma game, she had a major stroke. And so, of course, again, she got better during the week because that was the week before the Clemson game, and so we were going to come to that. Doug left early to come, and I was coming on Friday, and I got a couple of miles away, and I got a call saying that her sitters couldn't wake her up, and of course I U-turned immediately to go back. But the upstate Seminoles came through again, y'all, and with the help of Tom and Mandy and Sue, everything was fine except for the score of the game. And I am fully convinced that the reason we lost was because I had to watch that game with my Clemson brother and my Clemson nephews, and I had to drink my wine out of an orange plastic cup. As Laurel mentioned, our other big accomplishment this year is our tag, and we so love our tag, and we think it is absolutely beautiful. On my first trip back to Tallahassee in October after my mom's death, Laurel met me in the parking lot at Pearl Tyner on Friday night and told me I just won Circle of Gold. You cannot imagine my feelings. And then we went into the reception, and Seminole Jim came up to me and he said this. He said, "Let me give you $1 million. Let me give you $1 million bill." And I said, "Jim, I've already been given $1 million tonight. Give that to someone else." The Circle of Gold, more importantly, and what it represents, is worth $1 million. The Knoll spirit that is embodied in it is something more than gold, and I'm just so honored and humbled to have even been considered a recipient. I brought this little quote several years ago at Bill's, and I think this sums it up. From the inside looking out, you cannot explain it. And from the outside looking in, you can't understand it. Florida State University.
Diane, I don't know if I'd tell that Carol Martin story again. That was awesome. Okay, next we are going to recognize Joel Padgett. Sometimes volunteers are so good at working on behalf of their university that it makes sense to hire them and make them full-time workers. Joel Padgett is one of those volunteers whose passion turned into a profession. After graduating from FSU in 1972 with a degree in criminology, Joel headed south to West Palm Beach to take a job with the Parole Commission. A couple of years later, his old fraternity brother, Andy Miller, called him about drumming up some support for Seminole athletics in the then gator-infested South Florida. Miller sent Padgett a computer printout of alumni names that stood this high. Padgett decided to tackle the project in a very novel way, by phone. Padgett rallied fellow graduates in the West Palm Beach area, and after long days at work, he opened his office with multiple phone lines for evening phone-a-thons. To Andy's amazement, it worked. Before long, Joel and his fellow West Palm Beach volunteers were raising as much money as any Seminole club in the country, except Jacksonville. It was a little bit more long-standing. And of course, that was when I was there. The phone center turned into a full-fledged Seminole Booster Club, and Joel served as its president, and soon followed the traditional booster events like the Bowden Golf Tour and the banquet. Understandably, Joel was asked to take a seat on the Boosters National Board in 1978. By 1995, Andy Miller had finally convinced Joel to come up to Tallahassee and work his magic full-time. He joined Seminole Boosters as a senior vice president of gift planning. In that role, Joel has spearheaded a number of efforts, including the creation and funding of the sportsmanship statue, the creation of the varsity club, for which the former athletes have made him an honorary member. Joel and his wife, Diana, have given generously themselves to more than 30 individual causes at Florida State, including the Dynasty Campaign. Paget has been a member of the Alumni Association since 1984 and has been welcomed into the Custodes Lampadas organization, which is the most exclusive affiliation of Seminole boosters. I looked up the Latin, and it means keepers of the flame. Today, we welcome Joel Paget in another exclusive group, the FSU Alumni Association's Circle of Gold.
Thank you, Laurel. All the remarkable people who've made such an impact on our university and who've been given the Circle of Gold over the years, I viewed as really the generals and colonels in the university. And for an enlisted man like me to receive the award is overwhelming and humbling. It's also humbling to be here with the other recipients, who are all my friends as well. So I thank the Alumni Association very much for selecting me. After I learned that I was receiving the award, I thought about why in the world would I be getting it, and it suddenly dawned on me that for all of my adult life, the university had been at the center of my life. It's given me my best friends, it's given me my best memories, and I really should be giving back to the university. Some of you already know me, but I'll just tell you, I grew up in a tiny little farming town up near St. Augustine. We have a stoplight now. We had a caution light. It's Florida's potato capital. It's home of the Fighting Spudsters. My daddy worked at the paper mill, and my mama worked, she was a school secretary. And I knew from an early age, even though it was a great life there, that I wanted more out of life and that I wanted to be the first in the family to go to college. Some of my fondest memories growing up, fall mornings, be out in the front yard raking leaves, washing the car, mowing the grass, and a feed or fertilizer salesman would come by and stop in the street and ask Daddy, hey, you want some tickets for a ball game? I don't know that we ever turned them down. And so we'd go inside, get dressed, drive to the ball game. And of course, all the men had on felt hats and coats and ties, and the ladies had heels and wore corsages, I think, at the time. I don't remember because they were old ladies at the time. But just the thrill of being on a college campus, made you want to go to college even more. And then when you're sitting in the stands and the guys on the other side had their arms around each other and they were swaying and singing, we are the boys from, that other school. And I thought, man, I want to do that. I want to be out there swaying and singing, So, but when I was a freshman in high school, my next door neighbor was in school in Tallahassee. And so his parents brought me up with them one weekend. It was a spring weekend. And when we got into Tallahassee, it was probably February, March. Everything was in bloom. It was a magical place. And then we drove down College, and there were the gates of the university. And I thought, oh my God, this is really a magical place. It actually became a lot more magical on Saturday. They always had dances at the student union. And so I went with my friend, and there were more beautiful women than I'd ever seen in my life. And they would all come up and ask me to dance. And I never lied. I told them I was a freshman and that I might see them later. And then I got to thinking, if I have to be in the stands with my arms around somebody, swinging and singing, I might change my mind on this deal. So after graduating from junior college, my three buddies and I piled in my Chevy Nova, drove over to Prince Manor. It was brand new, and it was like the nicest place I'd ever lived in my life. 4 of us in a 2-bedroom, and we thought we were in hog heaven. But we had friends from home who had joined a fraternity, and we went around and talked to people all over fraternities. But there was this red-headed guy, he's a fast talker from Havana, and he convinced me and my roommates that we needed to join his fraternity, which we did. It was 1970. The country was really recovering from almost being torn apart with racial riots. Our society was changing. Women were burning their bras, those that had them. And all of us were really challenging things that had been norm for a long time. We were in the midst of a controversial war. All of us had friends who returned, who were forever changed. We also had friends that never made it. But all of us on campus knew that if we didn't make our grades, or if we graduated, we were being drafted. And we had a lot of fun. My fraternity brothers and I had a lot of fun. But I think that sharing the anxiety of that time, coupled with just the anxiety of being in college and relationships and what am I going to do and am I going to make my grades, I think that those years are really what binds us together so closely. Some of them are still here. I don't mean still here as in not dead yet, but I mean they're here they're here today, and they're still my very best friends. As Laurel said, 4 years after I graduated, I was actually working with the state attorney at the time, and I was toting a gun and keeping all of you people safe, and that's a frightening thought, I'm sure, but you made it this far, so I did a good job. But I got a phone call from